Hi, I'm Stacy Siegel, the Executive Director for the Seattle Architecture Foundation. Seattle Architecture Foundation is a nonprofit organization with the mission of connecting the public to the architecture, design, and history of our city. We believe that the more you engage with design, the more you feel connected to your changing city. We provide tours, talks, programs for kids and families, and special events. For more than 30 years, we have engaged the public through architecture walking tours all over Seattle. Our tours are led by passionate, trained volunteer guides who bring a unique perspective to the past, present, and future of our city. We hope you enjoy this tour preview, learn something new, and are inspired to explore our city and its neighborhood in new ways with one of our guides. Visit our website at seattlearchitecture.org to sign up for a tour today. You can also experience the best in Seattle architecture at your own through our mobile tour app, now available for free on iOS or Android. Thanks so much. Enjoy this preview.
Hi, my name is Nancy Day. I'm a volunteer tour guide at the Seattle Architecture Foundation. I've been doing that since 2016. I am happy to give you a taste of one of our newest tours called Stone to Steel, Seattle Style from Then Till Now. Like clothing, architecture has its hot trends and enduring styles. Our Stone to Steel tour shows you Seattle's examples of popular and styles of the times, decade by decade, starting when Seattle rebuilt itself after our Great Fire of 1889 and up through the present day. During that time, Seattle grew and changed and technology advanced, and Seattle's buildings reflect those changes. Let's start in Seattle's first business district, Pioneer Square. All of the city of Seattle is on land which was first owned and occupied by the Duwamish tribes. After the arrival of the first white settlers, which were called Bostons at the time, Seattle's downtown was a collection of wooden and brick structures that grew up around the home and sawmill of Henry Yesler, built in the early 1860s. Behind me is the site of Henry Yesler's first home, as well as the Pioneer Building, which was built on that same site right around the time of the fire. On June 6, 1889, a fire broke out in a cabinet shop at what is now First and Madison. 50 blocks were destroyed, which was primarily Seattle's central business district at the time, and in fact most of Seattle. New ordinances were passed by the city after the fire that required new buildings to be more fireproof, and that resulted in many of the stone and brick buildings that we see in Pioneer Square today. Commercial Seattle grew north and east from Pioneer Square, and the Stone to Steel tour follows the trajectory of Seattle's development and shows how Seattle's developers look to the latest in architectural trends and technology in building their structures that kept up with the fashions. Let's take a look at one of the early popular styles of the 1890s. American architect Henry Hobson Richardson, who lived from 1838 to 1886, was an architectural superstar in his era. Many architects around the country emulated his style, which became known as Romanesque Revival or Richardsonian Romanesque. One of his most famous buildings is of the Allegheny Courthouse in Pittsburgh, built in 1884. Here in Seattle, a young architect named John Parkinson entered a contest in 1890 to design a building for William Ballard and the Seattle National Bank. William Ballard was also the founder of the town of Ballard, which is now one of Seattle's most popular neighborhoods. Parkinson won the competition and built what is now called the Interurban Building at the corner of Occidental and Yesler in Pioneer Square. The building was completed in 1892. It has all the classic detailing of a true Richardsonian Romanesque building so popular at the time. It has heavy, massive stone and rough masonry. It has arcades of arched windows, and you can even see echoes of the Roman Colosseum. The building also have carved sandstone, including a lion's head above the doorway. Parkinson literally put his mark on the building by carving his name on the alley side at the sandstone base of the building. The financial panic of 1893 ground building to a halt in Seattle, but the Klondike Gold Rush between 1886 and 1889 revived Seattle's fortunes as prospectors came through Seattle for supplies and to be outfitted for their journeys to Alaska. Romanesque Revival style really reached its peak right around the time this building was built in 1892. When buildings began again in earnest following the panic, As the 1890s turned into the 1900s, styles were changing. Let's see what happened. In the 1890s into the early 1900s, a style evolved known as Beaux-Arts. It was popularized in America at the 1893 Columbian Exposition in Chicago, which also spurred a movement called the City Beautiful movement. Beaux-Arts architecture typically includes historical and classical styles and details, symmetrical facades, decorative garlands, pronounced cornices, and classical columns. At the intersection of 2nd and Cherry Streets in Seattle, there are fine examples of Beaux-Arts architecture. On the Stone to Steel tour, we'll see the 1911 Hogue Building, the 1904 Alaska Building, but today we're going to talk about the Dexter Horton Building that was built between 1921 and 1924 and was designed by John Graham Sr., who designed many notable buildings in Seattle, and actually 4 of them on the Stone to Steel tour alone, and he designed in a variety of styles. The Dexter Horton Building is on the site of the former New York building that was built in the Romanesque style after the 1889 Seattle fire. The New York building was the first post-fire building to be destroyed to make way for a newer, more up-to-date building. Truly an example of the old making way for the new. The frame of the Dexter Horton Building is made of reinforced concrete, and it had new high-speed elevators. It was designed in an E shape with 4 wings with deep light wells that allowed all the offices to have natural light. It has great columns at the center that are made of a material called granitex, which is actually a form of terracotta. The Dexter Horton Building includes Beaux-Arts detailing of columns, cornices, and an arched entry leading into a Roman coffered vault. From the Dexter Horton Building, one can see the detailing of its Beaux-Arts neighbor, the massive lion heads on top of the Hogue Building. As with all styles, the Beaux-Arts era came to an end. It reached its zenith at the end of the 1920s and made its way for more up-to-date, up-to-the-minute styles. In the first half of the 1900s, European architects Walter Gropius, Le Corbusier, and Mies van der Rohe introduced new ideas on architecture that were a distinct departure from what had come before. Rather than seeing buildings almost as canvases for artistic flourishes and expressions, their ideas made a 180-degree turn. To them, beauty was in plain surfaces, and buildings should be machines for living. As Mies van der Rohe famously said, less is more. Their ideas coalesced into a style that became known as International Style. Seattle's Norton Building, built in 1959 behind me, is the first such International Style building in Seattle. The Norton Building was designed by the architectural firm of Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill with Binden and Wright. It is Seattle's version of a groundbreaking Lever House, built and designed by the same architects in 1951 and 1952 in New York City. The Norton Building embodies all the key elements of modern international styles. It has simple right-angle geometric forms. It has a glass facade with concrete or steel exterior supports and a curtain wall that's applied to the exterior of the building. These prefabricated window panels that actually provide no structural support around the outside of the building, contrary to the types of technology that had come before. International style buildings also have a functional and logical floor plan. This was the first tall building in the country to use pre-stressed concrete beams, which permitted floor spans of 70 feet, eliminating the need for interior columns. International style buildings also have what are called pilotis, which are like thin columns that raise the building and lift up the mass of the building from the street below. By the 1950s, the flights to suburbs were happening. Cars were king. And this is the first Seattle high-rise to have an underground garage. The glass and steel international style building is seen in cities around the globe. It's truly international. They make no reference to local culture, materials, or environment. As always, though, time and styles march on. What's ahead? Let's move to the 1980s. The 80s are sometimes thought of as a time of excess, big spending, big hair, big shoulder pads. Architecture also had its brand of being over the top in the 1980s, and it's called postmodernism. Postmodernism reintroduced ornament and decorative motifs to building design, just what the modern and international style had shed in the 1950s and the 1960s. Postmodernists borrowed historical details from lots of different periods, but they weren't terribly concerned about being scholarly accurate. Building details might be lighthearted, arbitrary, or ironic. The 1982 Portland building in Portland, Oregon by Robert Graves is perhaps the earliest postmodern tall office building. The 1984 AT&T building in New York by Philip Johnson was also considered a groundbreaker. In Seattle, the 1201 3rd Avenue building, built in 1988 as the Washington Mutual Tower, is perhaps our most iconic example of postmodern architecture. The architects are Cohn, Peterson, Fox, and McKinley, and they conceived the first 45 stories as a glass cylinder encased in a granite box. The building has bands of striped metal panels that run vertically up the bays and horizontally as the tower reaches a setback. The central facades end in arches, and above them is the building's distinctive crest, a pyramid that pays homage to our historic Smith Tower. The architects chose a palette that was meant to be lively even on Seattle's grayest days. Light beige granite, cheerful blue grass, and shiny stainless steel accents keep it light and airy. The building has elements of both Art Deco design and classical revival design. You can see Art Deco in its verticality and its setbacks, and you can see classic design in its tympanum, its symmetry, and the grille work, which recalls Roman lattice design. The 1980s and postmodernism gave way to the newest new things. How did architecture change? What's going on today in architecture? Technology and changing values and changing climate are leading architects of contemporary buildings toward high-tech, environmentally conscious, sustainable, computer-aided designs that once again redefine what is modern. The F5 Tower, completed in 2017, is one of those buildings. In 2006, developer Kevin Daniels asked ZGF architects to design a building that would change the way Seattle looks at itself. Daniels was inspired by the style, sexiness, and sophistication of Audrey Hepburn. ZGF worked to incorporate the essence of Audrey into their design. The F5 Tower is a series of faceted planes that are rimmed by zigzag mega braces that form a truss around the building. The mega braces engage stiffness and strength of all the perimeter steel columns so that the interior columns are unnecessary. In 2006, Seattle building codes were changed to allow taller, skinnier office towers. There were also new requirements for buildings to meet environmental certification. F5's environmental features include a system to recapture rainwater for reuse, a rooftop solar energy system, and glass walls designed to regulate temperature and energy use. Internal staircases are also there to encourage taking the stairs instead of using the elevators. This new building literally overshadows what had gone before. It leans over the 1910 Beaux-Arts United First Methodist Church and the 1904 Jacobean Rainier Club. Today's modern office buildings are sleek, environmentally conscious, and efficient. I can't help but wonder if Henry Yesler were to look up Columbia Street from his home in Sawmill in early Seattle and see the future F5 Tower a few blocks away, what would he say? What would he think? We've gotten a taste of how Seattle's buildings have gone from stone to steel, past to present. There's more of the story to tell, styles we haven't even talked about. We hope we can welcome you soon to our in-person Stone to Steel tour, where you'll see more buildings and experience more styles from then till now.